Oh, I'm Bonnie Chang, a friend of indivisible Lambertville-New Hope from across the river in Pennsylvania. Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope was looking for someone outside of Lambertville, aka someone who knows nothing about the politics in Lambertville, to moderate the mayor forum. Having just come off conducting a similar session for our Doylestown mayoral candidates, I was honored to be asked to help, and it's my pleasure to be part of your democratic process to help the voters learn more about the candidates vying to lead your wonderful city for the next years. For this recording, we are interviewing Mr. Dave Del Vecchio, one of the two candidates. There is a similar interview with Andrew Nowick. Both recordings will be made available to the public on Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope's website on Monday, May 10th. For the record, the mayoral candidate interview series is hosted by Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope, and the organization is not endorsing any candidate, but providing a public service. At this recording, the only people who are present are Dave, myself, and an Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope person running the Zoom recording and keeping time. I understand my internet may be a little unstable, so I apologize in advance if my screen freezes every now and then. Just please bear with us. We will begin with a 2-minute candidate self-introduction and proceed with a 35+ minutes Q&A. Please note that neither candidate has seen these questions. We will end with a 1-minute closing statement by the candidate. We had received almost 60 questions submitted by many of you. We sorted, combined, and clarified some wordings and grouped them into 8 categories, and they are city finances, housing and development, especially on affordable housing and development challenges, city buildings, specifically on the library, city hall, and the police station, economic recovery, how to support the business community, Clausen Farm, the community, your leadership quality, and your vision.
What is the last thing, Bonnie? Sorry.
Vision.
Okay.
These represented the majority of the questions that are of most interest to the voters. We asked the candidates to keep their answers between 90 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on the questions, so we can bring to you the most amount of information from this interview. Hence the timekeeper, and we urge the candidate to respect our requests. We apologize in advance if we cannot fit the questions into this session. Mr. Del Vecchio, Dave, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us tonight. We are very pleased that you will be spending the next 40 minutes with us, basically going through a job interview. Without further ado, please take the mic for your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Bonnie. This year's election is one of the utmost importance. I'm David Del Vecchio, and I wanted to reintroduce myself as a candidate for mayor. For 27 years, I had the privilege of serving a city that I deeply love. We had some amazing accomplishments, such as the restoration of the Lambertville House, Ely Field, and Cavallo Park. We've been through floods, blizzards, and even a superstorm. They knocked us down, but they could never knock us out. While I could not be prouder of everything we've been through, I made mistakes along the way. I've rebuilt my family and my life, of which I cannot be prouder. My oldest son, Alex, is now at law school at Rutgers, and Matt is a soccer star who's a sophomore at South. I'm a candidate for mayor to build a better tomorrow for all of Lambertville. We need a city government that will provide you the services you demand while keeping taxes in check. We need to protect our historic treasures and help our businesses rebuild from COVID and thrive. I believe in uniting this community through hearing your voices, having an open dialogue, and developing consensus, including neighborhood meetings and office hours. I believe in a common sense approach to government and will hold the line on taxes, control spending, stop overdevelopment, help our businesses recover and grow, stop the pennies pipeline, fight climate change, and preserve our historic buildings. The current administration has significantly raised our taxes by an unprecedented 21.5% in 2 years. That's irresponsible and unacceptable when compared to the 4.2% increase in the previous 4 years. They put the blame on everybody but themselves. They significantly increased spending and squandered our surplus rainy day funds. The city has failed to provide a level of services we all deserve. We cannot continue these practices, and we cannot afford another repeat performance. Lambertville has always been an affordable community where a young family can put down its roots and a retired couple can stay in a home. Without that tradition, we risk losing the diverse community we all love. I'm happy to take any.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Dave. You certainly set the stage very well. And so let's start with the Q&A. For the candidate, some of these questions are multi-part, so please bear with me as I ask some long questions. We will begin with something on everyone's mind, the health of the city finances. Again, if you can, please keep your answers to 2 minutes. If you can explain the current state of the city's finances in a way that citizens can easily understand. To the extent you believe there is a problem, what is your plan to address it?
Well, I think there is a problem. And the fact is that people have been squeezed by 21.5% tax increases in the past 2 years. We had a rainy day fund that was able to pay our bills. $1 million of that is no longer in existence. We have to get back to basics. We have to provide services that people want for taxes that they can afford. One of the things that's always been attractive about Lambertville is it's been a community, a diverse community. And by these tax increases, we risk losing that diversity. So I think, I have a plan to go through the budget, to come up with a stable tax base, and to take us into the future without breaking our residents that are in fixed incomes and our older residents. Thank you for the question.
Okay. The current administration created the position of the business administrator and retained different professional services firms. Would you retain the position of the business administrator? And
no.
Sorry, this is a multi-part question, sorry.
All right.
How would you manage the fees charged by the professional services firm?
I'm not sure I understand that part of the question.
They have retained different professional services firms?
Yeah, well, the assumption in that question is that the same firms would be in place, and that doesn't have to be the case. So I think if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, in part one of the question is no in terms of business administrator, and part two is I would look at each situation and each firm and then make a decision based on what's in the best interest of our city. So I think the idea, they don't have lifetime appointments. So, if we wanted to change positions, we could do that. So I would plan on doing that.
Okay, so in your opinion, there is no need for the city of Lambertville to have a business administrator?
No.
Okay, all right.
We didn't have one for the 27 years that I was in office, and we have a budget situation where the administrator, the position has caused part of the problem.
Okay, all right. So the third question in this category is that, do you know how much money is going to come to Lambertville from the American Recovery Act?
$373,680.
Okay, and what would be your plan to spend that fund?
Well, my plan, I don't know yet because the rules still aren't clear.
Okay.
In terms of how we'll be able to use that money. My understanding is we're going to get it over a 2-year period, but that the rules on how you can spend it haven't been formulated.
Okay, it's fair enough. Okay, let's move into the second category of the question, which is on housing and development. Development is a major issue, and there are differing views in the city about how and where any development should occur. How would you define overdevelopment so that citizens can understand it? And is it a concern of yours? And
Absolutely. One of the things that I would like to do is stop overdevelopment, and you can do that through the planning board. For instance, when we had applicants come before the planning board, uh, rarely did the applicants get what they were asking for. You know, we had a process where we had the applicant meet with a subcommittee of the planning board and with the neighborhood and try to develop some consensus around, you know, what made sense with the neighborhood and what made sense in terms of the whole community. So I think you know, you have to take it piece by piece in terms of the issue of overdevelopment. And it's really, because we're so built out, it's really infill projects that we really have to watch out for. You know, taking you know, a piece of land and you know, dividing it up and you know, subdividing it, you know, that's really what we have to watch out for. Obviously, some of the proposals, overdevelopment is some of the proposals that went on in the past couple of years, like a mega government center. You know, that's inconsistent with the values of our community.
so do you have a plan on how you would manage growth? Because
Like I just said, we would, you know, you have to use the planning board
okay.
and use the planning board to really, you know, because that's where the applications come and that's where the applicants seek their projects. So, you know, if you can, through that process, if you can downsize projects on a regular basis, you can have an impact. And that's what we did for a long time. You know, if people came in looking for 4 units, they might get 3 units. And like I said, you know, part of the process was we had them work with the neighborhood. We had a subcommittee of the planning board work with them, and the applicant would work with them. So, you know, there was some consensus that came out of it, and I think people felt better about it as opposed to you know, what's been going on for the past couple of years, which was really a rubber stamp for the applicants.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the next question is about the police station, the lot there. If the lot is not redeveloped, what is your plan to meet the terms of our affordable housing settlement agreement?
Well, I actually had a affordable housing settlement agreement that was signed and executed. You know, it was an agreement with Fair Share that was ratified by Judge Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I thought we were all done with that. And then it was opened up and, you know, that's why we're at where we're at right now. So I think we would, you know, my plan was to do at the old high school, a mixed development where you'd have for-profit townhouses, and then you'd have an apartment building that would have the affordable units in it, but it would be a mix of affordable units and market rate units. So that way, you know, it'd be a mix of housing choices. And I think, you know, that way we'd get it all done in one place. And that was my plan. And it was, like I said, signed and executed. And, you know, I thought when I left office that was done, but it was apparently undone.
Okay. Yeah, our prepared question, the next one, I think you may have already answered the question, which is how can you provide a range of housing options that help ensure people and families of all ages, economic backgrounds live in Lambertville? So
well, that's what I've done for many years. We've done that. We've worked with Habitat for Humanity. We built 9 homes in the city of Lambertville, 9 Habitat homes.
Mm-hmm.
We used our homeowner rehab program to improve 50 properties throughout the city. That's it's a zero principal, zero interest loan to the homeowner, and it gets paid back when the property is sold. You know, so they get to improve their home, and then they don't have to pay it back until the property is sold. So we did about at least 50 of those, and we built a senior building to help people who can no longer afford or might not be able to keep up their home, but wanted to stay in the city. So I think, you know, it's a thing that's ongoing though, because, you know, affordable housing is just not a legal requirement. It's a moral requirement. And, you know, I firmly believe in that.
Okay. All right, great. Let's move on to the city buildings. our city facilities, the police station, the city hall, and the library are in dire need of repair.
Well, I challenged the question.
I'm sorry?
I have problems with the,
Okay.
you know, the basic thrust of the
Premise.
question.
Okay, all right. So the question is, what is your assessment of the cost benefit of repairing and upgrading them versus building new facilities? Or if you were saying that, or stay put and do nothing. So what is your preferred option?
My preferred option is to keep the buildings in the historic buildings that they're in terms of the library and city hall. And for the library, come up with a 5-year plan to improve the building. City Hall has been repointed. The roof has been redone. It has a new elevator. It's handicapped accessible. And it's really the interior that needs some work. So we could have a 5-year plan for that also. In terms of the police station, the building, the walls of the building are in piling, so they're fine. It's the floor that sunk a little bit. So, you just have to fix the floor. And that could be done, considering it'd be a 25-year, 25 years it would work for, that could be done for a fairly small number of dollars. So I think the idea would be to keep the historic buildings the city has, to fix the police station, to improve the library in terms of the issues that it has, and in terms of City Hall to take care of the interior of it, which is, the exterior has already been done. Like I said, it's been repointed, the roof's been done, it's handicapped accessible. The library is also handicapped accessible, and both buildings are also important because they are part of our, they have regeneration in terms of backup generation, as part of our emergency management plan. So, I think keeping both buildings is something that's important for our community, but making them better is something that I'm committed to. And like I said, it would be a 5-year plan.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to preface that we got these questions from the public.
I understand.
So, of course, it's up to you to refute their premise and provide your answers. So, and again, like, I don't know anything about the Lambertville politics and the building, so I'm just reciting some of these questions. I guess the library is really something that people treasure in Lambertville. So here's a question about the library. It's in its current state and current location. Is it able to realize its full potential and meet Lambertville's needs as an asset to the community? And if not, what in your view would need to happen in order for our library to be on par with other town libraries?
Well, I think it can, because if we needed additional space, there's actually room. If there was additional space that was needed, there actually is room to build an addition. So I think, that's doable. I think the building has served matter of fact, the year before I took office, the library was in the 2nd floor of City Hall. So it's really taken a giant step to the building that it's in. The building that it's in, like I said, has it's got to be improved over 5 years. And I think then, if the space is an issue, we can talk about expanding it, because there is room for expansion on the site. But I would, like I said, to build a new building, you have 2 questions. Where would you build it? How much? 3 questions. Where would you build it? How much would it cost, and how would you pay for it? So those are significant issues to overcome. And I think it's much easier to work within the existing structure. And if that includes an expansion, I'm happy to support that.
Okay. So there was a follow-up question about, what do you think about joining the Hunterdon County Library System?
Well, there was a referendum question on that a couple of years back, and people voted overwhelmingly to maintain our own public library. So our community spoke. So to me, when the people speak in terms of a referendum, that's clear.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's move into economic recovery. Understanding that tourism is a major economic driver for Lambertville, what is your plan to help the small businesses in the city hurt by the pandemic to continue to make Lambertville an attractive tourist destination? And how will you fund any business recovery efforts?
Well, I think it's important to, I'm going to be meeting with a group of business owners, and we're going to develop a plan because, the pandemic has been very hard on small businesses. It's been very hard on everyone, obviously, but it's been particularly hard on small businesses. So I think the idea is to sit down with some business owners, develop a plan. Right now, there is a significant amount of money that's out there, and develop a plan. Some of it would be bricks and mortar. Some of it would be things that the city needs, like bathrooms, for instance, for our business district. Maybe improve sidewalks. Maybe different things to beautify the central business district, and come up with a plan as a partnership between the city and the business district, and then go to the Murphy administration and look for money, because the money that just came from the federal government still has not been targeted in terms of all the all the uses. So I think there's a small time period, a window to sort of come up with a plan and present the plan and maybe get some funding.
Okay. All right, here's a question that may spur lots of Pennsylvanians to come across the river. Would you be willing to support a marijuana dispensary in town?
Yes.
Okay. And do you want to expand on that, or that's just your answer just explains itself?
Well, yeah, I'll expand on it. There was a public question for recreational marijuana in the state of New Jersey, and in the city of Lambertville, it received more votes than any person or any issue that came before it. So, it was the highest voting. Recreational marijuana got more votes than anybody in the history of the city of Lambertville. So obviously there's support for it in the community. I think it was like 82% of the people supported it. There's right now, there are people who own the old River Horse Brewery that they've been keeping available, and they're interested in getting a license. That would be a good location, but I think there could be other locations. But and my understanding is, in terms of the we talked about fiscal issues before, that recreational marijuana could provide the city with in the neighborhood of $300,000-$400,000 a year in terms of additional revenue, which would be greatly appreciated and needed.
Of course, will be very welcomed, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now let's talk about Clausen Farm, right? Do you support the property purchase? If so, what do you envision as future uses for the property, and how will you implement that vision? And if you do not support the purchase, why not?
Yeah, I actually have no problem with the purchase. Now, it broke with a practice that I had put into place, where we never purchased a significant piece of land without a referendum. So I wish there had been a referendum, and I wish there had been a couple of appraisals for that. And I think in terms of the public, it would be a non-issue if there was a referendum, because if it passed, then the people will have spoken. So I think it was a missed opportunity for the city to not have a referendum for the Clausen Farm. In terms of what to do with it, I think you preserve the older home and the hillside that people are concerned about, and then I think I'm not sure, then the community would have to be involved, and there'd have to be some consensus in what to do with the rest of it. Um, so, um, that would be an ongoing discussion with the community.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on to,
But back to the Clausen Farm, once
yeah,
again, I think not having a referendum was a missed opportunity. And, having a referendum would have made it a lot easier in terms of, how everyone feels about it.
okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next category of question, which is the community of Lambertville. Many people are concerned with the loss of civility in our politics and the increasing divisiveness in our community. What measures will you and your team, supporters, do to focus on policies and address issues while maintaining a civil tone in the mayoral race and uniting the community after the election? Specifically, if you're elected, what will you do to help heal the city? And if you're not elected, how will you work with the new administration?
Well, first of all, the tone of the mayor's race has been civil, number one. Um, and I think in terms of the city, it all starts with leadership from the top. We've had, the past 3 years, 2.5 years have been very divisive. And I think, you just have to change the way people are addressed. You have to change the way we approach things. People who don't agree with you are not your enemies. I think we have to understand that we have a lot more in common as people who live in Lambertville than not in common. So, the idea that people are arguing or being divisive, makes no sense because we're all in the same boat, if you will. So I think it's important to show leadership by treating people properly. I think it's important to show leadership by how the dialogue is presented. I think it's important the way the meetings are run. And if I'm fortunate enough to win, I would look for Mr. Nowick to play some role in my administration, and I would hope he would offer the same thing. And in 2018, when I was not successful in the mayoral race in the primary, I was very supportive in terms of helping the incoming mayor in terms of anything that she wanted or needed in terms of the transition. And I think that's, you set the tone by your behavior.
All right. Now, we're going to go into the area of leadership qualities. I do want to point out the two candidates, you and Mr. Nowick, have been asked identical questions so far, except for in this category, because there were many submissions of questions that were directed specifically at you. So we feel obligated to ask you at least 3 of them that's specifically about you, which we did not ask Andrew. The first one is that you have stated 3 years ago that people in Lambertville like you as a mayor, but wanted a new and improved Dave Del Vecchio. So I know you mentioned a little bit about that in your opening statement, but could you talk more about what is new and improved, and how a new Dave Del Vecchio will be different for the city than the former one?
Well, I think, everything is a work in progress, as they say. And, I've made amends with my family. I think that's the most important thing. I've made amends in terms of some of the people that were affected. So I think that, losing the election was something that was probably a good thing for me, because I had the opportunity to and the time to think about my life, where I was going, what I was doing. And I think, I've come out of it a better person. And I think My relationship with my kids couldn't be better. They support me 100% in this endeavor. And, I just think I'm in a better place than I was before. And I think, people will see that. People who talk to me have noticed that. I think people have commented on that. So, I think that's, it's not been an easy time, but, it's still a work in progress. But I think I'm in a better place, and I think I'm a better person than I was a couple of years ago.
Okay. So while you were mayor, city buildings fell deeper and deeper into disrepair. Please explain how this was allowed to happen. Again, this is a submission from a public.
Well, first of all, I haven't been mayor for 3 years, so they're talking about buildings in disrepair. Why hasn't something been done in the past 3 years? And the second thing is, the police station has one issue, and that's with the floor, one major structural issue. City Hall was addressed. There was repointing. There was a new roof. It's handicapped accessible. In terms of the library, we were starting to work on that, and then time in my administration ran out. So, and as I said before, I'd have a 5-year plan on how to improve that and how to move forward. And if space is an issue, then let's talk about expanding the facility. But the buildings were to say that they were in horrible disrepair 3 years ago. I have trouble with the question.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. So the next question, again, focus on you as the mayor, or is talking about, would you work differently with the city staff and council than you did in your prior years? And if so, how?
In terms of the city staff, there was never an issue between me and the city staff. So the issue with the city staff and the mayor happened in this administration. It didn't happen with me. Okay. The current mayor is being sued by the former business administrator, but there was never anything in terms of any issue with me. And if these questions were asked of me, I would hope you would talk to Mr. Nowak about his experience. In the same sense, since I obviously have the experience, mm-hmm. and you ask questions for me in terms of that you wouldn't be asking for him, then it would be appropriate that you would talk to him about how he would overcome his lack of experience, as opposed to because he hasn't had any.
Right. Okay. Now we're looking into the future. What would be your priorities once in office? For example, in the first 90 days?
I think 2 things. Get services back on track. Whether it's been consistent garbage collection, consistent operation of the street sweeper, better snow removal. Obviously, the snow removal depends on having snow. The convenience center, which most people in town now call an inconvenience center because it's rarely open. These are things that I've heard from people that they would like to see, put in a better place. And I would take those on right away. And I think the other thing that I would do is focus on the budget and look at the budget piece by piece, every aspect of it, and how is there any way to do it more efficiently? Is there any way to look at different funding sources for it? Is there any way to look at new revenue sources? And obviously, one of the revenue sources would be recreational marijuana. But so I would say the 2 things immediately would be services and the budget, and I think the other thing that really has to happen is we have to lower the dialogue in terms of how people talk to each other and how people treat each other and the divisiveness of the community. So I would look to bring the community together and focus on the fact that we're one Lambertville. We're not two Lambertvilles. And this is, you know, the thing that's even more interesting is it's all part of the Democratic Party in the city of Lambertville. So, you know, I think we clearly have more in common than we have not in common. So I think, you know, bringing people together, bringing people together, delivering services, and focusing on the budget would be the first three things that I would focus on.
Okay.
And the fourth obviously would be, you know, some of the consultants that, you know, people have questioned in the past couple of years. You know, I would look at those and you know, see whether it still made sense for them to serve the city.
Okay. So here's a question that sort of reflect a little bit of the comments you just made. This is, if you are elected, what do you feel are your strengths that you bring into the office? And what do you feel are areas where you have more to learn?
In terms of the strengths, I think I'm a problem solver. I think I can solve a lot of issues that come before us in terms of the government. I understand the government. I understand the budget process. I understand the finances of the city. Under my administration, the city received a AA bond rating from S&P, you know, which is one of the higher bond ratings given. You know, and they certainly don't have a horse in the race. So, you know, the fact that they looked at us and said that we were in good financial shape is important. So I think, you know, my financial background in terms of municipal finance, my problem solving, my understanding of the financial structure of the budget. I think my understanding of the laws governing municipalities. I think that's important that someone understands that. I would say those are all strengths. I think the need to communicate on a regular basis with the public in a more meaningful way is something that we probably didn't do as well as we should have. And I think, you know, that's something, you know, the idea of, you know, the current administration put in night hours. I think that's a good idea. I think continuing that would be something worthwhile. I think, you know, communicating with the public in meaningful ways is something that we probably didn't do enough. So I think that's something that we need to do more. I think clearly you know, the government itself is something that, you know, I bring a lot of strength to in terms of, you know, my knowledge of it, my understanding of it, and, you know, knowing how it works. You know, services, when I was in office, services were delivered on a regular basis, and there were.
Okay. Yeah. So sounded like you've tackled a lot of tough problems in the past. And so what did you learn from that experience in terms of solving problems for the city?
The thing I learned is just when you think you have, you know, we dealt with 3 floods. We dealt with a power outage for 2 weeks. We, you know, had different problems. You know, every time you think you have it under control, something else comes up. So you have to always be prepared to address it and you know, deal with whatever's coming before you. So I think being prepared is the key, because, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, and things happen. You know, things happen all the time, and, you know, things that you can't prevent happen. So I think it's important that you're prepared, that your administration is prepared. And I think that's something that we did very well. You know, our OEM operation was very good. And I think, you know, in terms of the floods, in terms of the superstorm, we did a very good job in sort of, you know, doing what we needed to do and helping people get out of their homes and then get back into their homes. You know, so I think the other thing that you talked about strengths and weaknesses. I think another strength I have is it's called OPM, and that's other people's money. And you know, I'm very good at going after money, you know, with state and federal government. and did very well in that in terms of the city. That's how a lot of projects got done, and I'm happy to continue to do that. We talked about earlier doing that with regard to the business district. I think that's important. So, that's my answer.
Okay, great. So one other thing, you also mentioned a little bit about it. The question is, are there things from the current administration that you would like to keep? And you mentioned about the night hours. And are there other things you would like to keep? And are there things that you would eliminate, and why?
Yeah, one is the business administrator. That was obviously costly, and the business administrator cost almost $300,000. Exorbitant legal fees that would be eliminated. That cost, in my last 2 years in office, we spent $40,000. In the last 2 years, we spent $200,000 on legal fees. So, that's a lot of money for a small municipality. So I think, those are things that we would eliminate. I think that, the focus on, I think the Lambertville Matters, which is a newsletter. I think, I would continue that. I would make it less political and more informational, but I think that's important for getting important information out to the public. So, there are things you learn all the time from different people, and, you need to incorporate that into whatever you're doing. And I'm willing to do that. And, I certainly don't have all the answers. But like I said, I do know how government runs. I do know how the budget is put together. I'm the person who put the budget together for the city for 27 years. So I understand that completely. I understand dealing with the employees. I understand, making people accountable. And the other thing we did was we did more with less. There are times when we lost large, significant amounts of state aid, and we had to come up with different ways to deal with that. And we downsized our government, but still delivered the services that people want and need. We did more with less, and that's something that people look for you to come up with ways to not overtax them, but still deliver the services that they need.
So yeah, so Dave, so actually time flies, and we're now going to ask you your last question, and this is the question about your vision, right? So what do you envision the city will be like, and what will be said about you after your first term?
My
next first term.
My second first term.
Yeah, right.
I think that what I would like to be said is that that I brought to the table everything that I always brought to the table, which is the ability to make the city run, but that I came with a different approach in terms of how I treated people. I came with a different approach in terms of my whole behavior. I came with a different approach in terms of having the support of my family. So I think I would hope that people would say, he can still run our government, but he's a better person. That's what I would hope people would say at the end of a second first term.
Okay, great. I'm sure everybody will agree that being the next mayor of Lambertville is definitely not an easy cakewalk, right? There's a lot of challenges. So since we just concluded our Q&A portion of the interview, we are giving you another opportunity, Dave, to provide a closing statement, like anything you'd like to share with the audience.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, Bonnie, and I would like to thank Indivisible for scheduling this forum. Lambertville, as I said, has experienced unprecedented challenges over the past 2 years: skyrocketing tax increases, uncontrolled spending, and a global pandemic. We need to get back on track. I've listened to our residents, and I've heard many concerns. The city has failed to provide the level of services we all deserve: reliable garbage collection, consistent street sweeper operations, and opening up the convenience centers are things residents have asked for. I have a proven record of being a problem solver and have plans for Lambertville's future always with an eye on the taxpayer's bottom line. Experience, as demonstrated by President Biden's leadership, has provided our country with stability as well as a sense of calm and direction. I have the experience to take Lambertville into a bright future with stable finances that allows both young families and aging couples to thrive. I will protect our environment and will refuse to sell out historic treasures like our magnificent City Hall. I support a common sense approach to government that includes careful planning and building consensus. Overdevelopment of our city is the opposite of our values. I'll take a stand against this. Let me make this crystal clear. The soul of our city is not for sale, not in my watch. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm asking for your vote in the upcoming primary, and stay safe.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for addressing all these questions and to help us better understand how you plan to be a champion and steward for Lambertville. For the audience, who are watching this recording, if you have any further questions for Dave, please feel free to contact him and his campaign. If you have feedback for Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope, please contact the organizers via their email at info@indivisiblelnh.com. And an acknowledgement to the audience who are watching this recording. Thank you for participating in this process to be an informed voter. And best of luck to you, Dave, in the mayoral race.
Thank you.
And last but not least, a big shout out to the leaders of the Indivisible Lambertville-New Hope for organizing this event. What a wonderful civic service you just provided. And so to the audience, hope you found this session with Dave very informative, and hope you'll also watch the session with Andrew Nowick. So this concludes this evening, or the session, I should say, and bye for now.